Hey guys, so I haven't really been feeling the greatest these days. I've been really tired, um, and I feel like I'm catching a cold, but that's neither here or there. So before I allow for my body to shut down, I said, let me just record some content and some things that I've been thinking about. So, what I've been thinking about lately is how many relationships slowly lose their spark because one person becomes responsible for carrying all of the emotional labor. So, not because there's cheating, not because there's abuse, not because there's some huge betrayal, but because one person is constantly explaining what they need, explaining why they're hurt, explaining why consideration matters. They're also explaining why certain things feel dismissive or why connection requires effort. And after a while, right, you stop feeling like a partner, you start feeling like a teacher or maybe a coach. Now, before anybody jumps in and says, well, people aren't mind readers, yes, I agree with that. Communication is necessary. Nobody comes into a relationship knowing everything about another person. We all have different experiences, different triggers, different love languages, different ways we've been taught to show up in the world. So, yes, there are conversations that need to happen. There are things that need to be learned. There are moments where grace is required. But here's where I struggle. At what point does communication become coaching? At what point does grace become self neglect? Because I keep seeing people say, well, maybe they just don't know any better. And honestly, that may be true. Maybe they weren't taught healthy communication. Maybe they never saw healthy love. Maybe they grew up in environments where consideration wasn't modeled. Maybe nobody ever taught them emotional intelligence. But understanding why someone struggles doesn't automatically make their behavior sustainable for me. That's the part people leave out, right? I can have empathy for your story and still acknowledge that your story is hurting me. I can understand your wounds and still recognize that the impact that it has on me and it's having on our relationship. I can love you deeply and still be exhausted because eventually the issue isn't whether someone knows, the issue becomes whether someone cares enough to learn. That's the difference. It's a huge difference. I don't need perfection. I don't need someone who gets everything right. I don't need someone who can read my mind. But what I do need is someone who listens when I speak, someone who remembers